Software prerequisite for using my map importer is a copy of F-model and U-model that support Rebirth. And you would select just textures. And then once U-model's open, you can just find like the folders that you want to get the textures out of. Like in this case, the environment folder has most of them. So I would export folder content to a folder that I want to export folder content to. What matters is that in the end, you have a folder that's got your game textures. Where this parent folder, you've got environment as a subfolder of that. Maybe also character if you want to have the props load in properly. And then beneath that, you've got like the DDS files. Those are going to have a much smaller file size than TGA because TGA files are uncompressed and DDS files are the compressed files that the game uses. So you know it's the exact original data in the game package, but repackaged into a format Blender understands. And an F model, you're going to want to load that up. And you're going to have the end content level. And for end content level, I would just right click and save folder package properties as JSON for the whole thing. That's going to convert the placement data of every map file into text that my script can read, but not the terrain itself, just the information on what gets placed where. So then the folder that I told you for the DDS files, you're going to want to paste that into there. And if you did something other than DDS, just change the extension. And then for the JSON files, you're going to want to find the equivalent. The folder from F-model that has level as a subfolder is going to be called content. So you're going to want to set content as that and just make sure it saves. And then finally, if you've got the prop libraries that I put up, or you made your own prop libraries where each one is named after the game asset in question that it's looking for, you can either select from Blender's asset libraries that are registered as asset libraries, or you can click custom folder and direct it to that cache of blend files. Folder structure does not matter just as long as the blend files are beneath that. I've already got FF7R registered. You're also going to want the UMap and UBulk files of each respective map that you actually want to import. You can save all of them at once as the raw U asset from either F-model or U-model, and that'll save the UMap and UBulk together, just as long as you've got them somewhere. And for one, you can just drag and drop the UMap onto Blender. And this option will make it so that there's a copy of each object at the world origin along with wherever it gets instanced to. Uncheck that if you don't need those. LOD level, this is self-explanatory. These are just different ways of determining what LODs get imported. Scale, you should never need to change that. And it should populate from what you put in the add-on settings. However, I don't recommend doing the import with material mode or rendered mode turned on if you're in Eevee. You can have cycles rendered turn on if you're a freak like that, but I would just put it in solid for the import. And then I'd once that finishes, they're going to be nowhere near you. So there's multiple ways of getting to them. I would first set the clipping distance like that. I increase clip start so there's more precision and less flickering. Higher you put that, the more stable the image looks, at the cost of course, if you get too close to things, they start despawning. And you can either import individual map JSON files, or you can go up here, import a whole region folder with this file. So this time let's import the whole gold saucer, because why not? You can see for the JSON import options, there's pretty self-explanatory. Recursive import will mention any UMAPs mentioned in the JSON you're importing. Like gold.json will import the whole gold saucer. This will choose to import the terrain if the .umap files are in the same folders, specifically under the game content root, which is the same place that we set up earlier. The first thing it does is it indexes the asset libraries at the path that you told it to. That takes a while because there's a lot of them. And then it starts importing all of the objects. Okay, so it seems like I broke it in 2.0.0 and it does not import everything. It just imports some of them. I'll look into that. I'll fix that. But you get the point. To achieve the same thing, you could just drag and drop or select in the file selector all the JSON files at once. It supports multi-select, all the individual ones. So I'm just going to drop terrain and light onto here. So now the gold saucer has loaded in. You can see all of the lights are present and all that. You can go in the outliner and check off the underscore instances. That will disable all of the terrain data that we're parsing. And this shows just the objects that are loaded from the asset libraries. You can see even just the main gold saucer file, a lot of them load in. That's not even counting all the separate ones for the squares. But most awesomely, you've got all of the lights here. They're not going to behave one-to-one with how they do in the game, of course, because it's a different engine. I also found another bug that I'm going to fix as we speak, and that is on versions prior to 5.1. I see that the texture setup for terrain has been broken. That's just because this is vibe coded and AI does stupid shit. Fix for that, of course, is just for me to find the curves thing, and you can see that the AI assumed that it would be laid out like in the UI where the first entry is combined, then RGB. That's not how it's laid out at all. The combined actually comes last, so we need to drop this by 1. I do most of my work in Blender 5.2 Alpha right now, so that's why that slipped through the cracks. And now after a reload, everything works perfectly fine. Now, if you want to set this up for Eevee, you're going to need light probe volumes. And what you can do is just add one, place it somewhere in the map, scale it up a bunch. For now, let's even just make one that's the size of the entire gold saucer. Yeah, it's roughly a cube when you count all the stuff that sticks off of it. And yours is not going to want to cover the entire thing because you're going to want higher resolution ones in places that need it, and then sparse ones like this that cover the whole thing. But this gets you started. I would do 16, 16, 16 here because but turning on ray tracing in Eevee with the fast GI at approximately 0.5 is a good default. And then turning up the RAM as much as makes sense for your system. I've got a lot of both RAM and VRAM, so I'm turning that up all the way. When I go into material mode, at first it will look really gross because the light probe volume hasn't been calculated. You can either do that, bake the light cache on the individual light probe, or you can just pull up the search and do bake light cache. And then at the bottom of the screen, you can see that runs. Now we have a general approximation for lighting in this area, where things aren't perfect, but it's Eevee. Eevee sucks. And then adding in some light probe spheres for reflections, you can see adds the like reflections on those railings. You just got to make sure it's scaled up enough. Your clipping settings make sense. It can help to summon in the viewport display like data checkbox, and you can see that this is what the reflection can see. And yeah, of course, just put a bunch of those where they make sense. Lastly, I'm going to import the gimmick file. This tends to have all the skeletal meshes from the asset libraries, and also anything that gets like enabled and disabled by different parts of the game. All right, now that's done, and all the tubes and stuff got imported because they are in the gimmick file. Yummers. Back over to cycles for, and then we are done. Ta-da! One thing that kind of applies to both render engines is that you're going to want to select a piece of emissive terrain geometry, and then if you want select all or just related objects, and then click Alt on your keyboard and drag up the emission strength. This way you can alter how much glowing objects actually glow, at least when they're pieces of terrain geometry. You're on your own when it comes to props, but it's nice to be able to affect all of these kind of at once, so to speak. You can turn them off, you know, turn them up to 10, whatever. And you can of course do this for just individual ones if you